I'm Thomas Brophy. I'm president of Institute of Noetic Sciences. And this talk is about Roger Penrose's Neoplatonic ontology as a foundation for a science of parapsychology. And I added this colon, and how consciousness affects the physical world. Okay, so it's a very brief talk, so I thought I'd give you your takeaways right up front of this talk. First, modern physics potentially is not inconsistent with a lot of parapsychology. And I suggest parapsychologists have bought into the dogma that the physical universe is causally closed. And I think that we can call that as the ontological problem that was talked about last night in the PA president's speech. And also, modern physics, quantum physics, is not causally closed. This opening is being exploited by leading science of consciousness theorists. Science of consciousness is sort of a sister field to parapsychology. And for example, the physics Nobelist Sir Roger Penrose and others use precisely this approach as the foundation of his proposed science of consciousness. And last night, our PA president pointed to the importance of including ontological discussions in sciences and the need or recommendation for the field of parapsychology to engage in disruptive science. And we could call that revolutionary science. Disruptive science is also kind of revolution. And so finally, don't get left behind. Liberate ourselves from the dogma of the causal closure of the physical to connect psi to the rest of science. So this over here is a chart from Roger Penrose's book, Shadows of the Mind, 1994. And the basic ontology that he lays out has these three fundamental domains of ontology. And that's why this is very similar to Wolfgang's diagram that he put up in the first talk. And I'll go into what these domains are. And then first, why does science need a revolution? So not only neuroscience needs a revolution to understand consciousness, science needs a revolution to understand consciousness. And three key reasons are because the materialistic view of science fails to address the hard problem, which is the existence of qualia, experience, and it fails to address the problem of agency, how consciousness can act in the physical world, and it's incompatible with the non-local consciousness psi data or our experience of reality. Okay, so this is what Penrose's three domains are. Now, this is only a small part of his book, but I think it's the best part. But it's the part he emphasizes least. But so you have this Platonic domain and Platonic domain of reality, physical domain of reality, and the mental domain of reality. And they all interact on this view. And so what are these domains? The Platonic domain is an objective domain of reality. It's objective. It contains true mathematics, mathematical forms, like Plato emphasized, but also Plato, put the good, the beautiful, metaphysics. I think you can also put like metaphysics, all metaphysical structures in there too. And then over here you have the physical world. We pretty much know what that is, but the physical world is also objective. It's the objective physical domain. It's everything empirical, everything measurable that is described by modern physics, chemistry, biology, etc. And over here you have the mental world, the mental domain of reality, which is subjective. This is the subjective domain of reality. And so that has qualia, thoughts, feelings, sensations, experience of being. And so you can look at the sort of spectrum of ontologies of reality. You have idealism here in terms of this three-domain chart. You have idealism on the left, which really posits that, or conjectures that the mental world is the only real domain of the three, and it precipitates out the physical world, and it really doesn't say anything about a Platonic domain. And then you'll have the physicalist ontology of reality, and the physical world that precipitates out everything else, everything else emerges from it. So physical is really the only real domain. On this view, all three domains are equally real. Some theorists throughout history make one or more of them more real. Like Plato himself made the Platonic domain more real and precipitating out the others. Roger Penrose, he uses this kind of tri-domain view, but then he also says he kind of agrees with Plato. But anyhow, it's a flexible model. And so I'm going to talk about experiments that tell us about these arrows that are the functional areas that relate to different domains and can tell us about something, whether the Platonic domain exists. And so first a little bit from the world of religion and esoteric traditions, and then psi research, like Ions does, and parapsychology does, and then also from the science of consciousness, the sister field, and some experiments there. So world of religion, sort of a canonical version of this is the Vedic ontology of consciousness, which is a type of Neoplatonic approach, in which you have the Atman, unitary oversoul, that precipitates out separated in space-time souls, little souls, mind consciousnesses that then operate body, brain, action, and perception, called Maya in Vedic ontology, and that Maya is really the world of science. We call it in the West, and so that was brought to America in 1893 by Vivekananda, the World Parliament of Religions, and I've only got 3 minutes. So the problem was that was a lot of popular back then, but 1890s was classical physics. It was the foundations of science. So that classical physics is inconsistent with this kind of view. But now the solution is modern physics is not inconsistent. That was my initial point about the causal closure of the physical. So this applies to what's going on in AI, artificial intelligence. And this is why Roger Penrose and I think that the only kind of AI, computing AI, that could potentially become conscious would be quantum computing. Classical computing AI that we have now cannot be conscious on this view. And a group at Google, led by Hartmut Neven, and also with Christoph Koch, the consciousness researcher, is actually testing this view. And so their experiment is testing this physical world to mental world. But it's not testing about the Platonic domain existence. There's Santos Hellerkar's new device where it's optical diffraction experiment device. It's very similar to Dean Radin's device, except Hellerkar uses it passively. So there's no intention. He just puts it near a conscious being, and he actually gets a result. It's very interesting. So this tests that view. So it tests the arrow to the Platonic domain. And then Dean Radin's version of this uses intention. So it tests that Platonic domain arrow, but it also tests the mental domain acting on the other domains. Dean has some really interesting new results. I'll skip over those. And so once you get the hang of what these domains of reality are and how they interact, you can go through all these other slides really fast, which I'm going to do. Roger Penrose and Stuart Hameroff's objective orchestrated reduction model of consciousness, of course, uses this model. And one of my key points is that their model is very psi-friendly. It's very parapsychology friendly. And Hameroff and Penrose note that. And they say that's one of the things in favor of their model. So any models of consciousness that use this three-domain approach are psi-friendly. they're really the only leading theories of consciousness, scientific theories of consciousness, that are psi-friendly. So I think it's worth it for the field of parapsychology to, maybe think about getting behind it. And there's some other experiments related to these. I'm going to go through to the conclusion. Well, on the way to the conclusion, I'll leave you to read about a proposal to propose a new component of reality. You could call it noetic charges that do this operation between the physical world and the Platonic world. And there have been new properties of reality proposed and actually accepted throughout history, from Newton's property of universal gravitational mass, Maxwell's property of electric charge, then the quantum wave nature of matter, and then the property of spin, property of flavor charge and color charge, and then not really new properties, but we have the whole recent in cosmology, dark matter and dark energy. These are all new aspects in physics. And so why can't we now propose a property of nature we could call noetic charges that can advance the science of consciousness and have a foundation for a science of parapsychology? And that can make sense of these kind of things, like a chi body and that sort of thing, that you can't make sense of in the physicalist models. So, summary. An actual theory that includes a new property of noetic fields that interacts with matter through the wave function collapse, quantum wave function collapse process, can begin to address the consciousness problems of qualia and agency. And this category of theory, so this is a meta-theoretical approach, it's not only one specific ontology. This category of theory can sustain the types of phenomenology of the revolution in science that we experience. It's including psi. Experiments that can evidence the existence of the Platonic domain are in progress, and so join the revolution.
So, thank you, Thomas. It was a very interesting talk. So, and we have about 3 minutes for quick questions. No, okay, we have one over there.
I really enjoyed this talk, and I wanted to know more about. Well, it seems that you were, from what I can gather, yeah, Penrose's theory is very psi-friendly, and so is he. So that's very good. And he gave a talk a couple months back in something related to consciousness, and he mentioned a lot about retrocausality in his model. So I was wondering, how do you think it would fit into your conception of this new type of field?
Yeah, yes. His approach to the quantum gravity collapse of the wave function requires incorporating a kind of retrocausality, microphysical retrocausality. And that's because just ordinary quantum mechanics, the collapse of the wave function, and the Bell inequality and the entanglement physics, it requires a kind of retrocausality too, just ordinary quantum physics experiments.
So, over there.
Thank you. It was. I'm sorry we didn't have the time to go over all your slides, but it was a wonderful presentation. And I was wondering when is that we are going to hear a little more about the hammer of Penrose hypothesis, because the thing is that it has not been refuted, to my knowledge, and it's probably the only hypothesis that is accepted by, as a non-refuted hypothesis by the scientific community, that comes to try to explain David Chalmers' hard problem of consciousness, right? How does the experience of qualia come from? So I am more than a question. This is just a commentary about that. That is very, very satisfactory to hear you including this this topic. And also, I wonder why is that the hammer of Penrose hypothesis of consciousness has not received more attention from the parapsychological community as a topic. Thank you.
That's a question for the parapsychological community, and I sort of come from the science of consciousness community to the parapsychological community. But the science of consciousness community, they don't accept it very much either. They kind of grudgingly point out it's one of the leading models. And the reason they don't is because they're, I think, by and large, still stuck in the warm, wet brain idea that because the brain is warm and wet, biology, quantum physics can't have anything to do with it. But there are all sorts of reasons now why we know that's just not true at all. But they still are stuck in that mindset. And that's why the science of consciousness community hasn't paid much attention to the Penrose-Hameroff approach, because it requires that quantum physics, quantum superposition, macroscopic scale at room temperature be involved at the center of it. And also partly because it relies on Penrose's quantum gravity model of quantum wave function collapse. But it doesn't really require that. You can set up that whole structure whether or not there is the quantum gravity type of collapse.
Well, thank you. Sorry, we are running out of time, so that was the last question.
We can talk more later.
Thank you very much, Thomas.